Names are really hard. They're hard to come up with. It's hard to come up with a name that you think is going to represent this thing that you're working on for a long time. And especially when you're going to sell that to somebody, there's a lot of other things to think about. Right now, I'm in the process of thinking of a name for my next game. I have a code name that I use. It's Mana Forge, but that's the name of a board game. So I can't use that. I'm not going to do that. So I'm looking for a different name for it. And these are things that I'm keeping in mind when I'm coming up with different names for the game, trying to get something that's going to fit. I'd love to hear how you all come up with names as well, so leave some suggestions down there. When I'm thinking about names, one of the first things that comes to my mind now, because I've messed it up before, is to pick a name that you can actually pronounce. You're going to be saying it a lot, like a lot more than you think you will. Even if you're not planning on going to IRL events or going to like show it off in person or something like that, you're still going to be saying that name a lot. Anytime someone asks you what you're doing, you're going to say the name. And if it's a really hard name to say, that's gonna suck for you. So if you wanna call your game Super Shell Smashers 7, I had to concentrate a lot to do that, by the way. Maybe pick a different name, or maybe don't, and it's kind of fun as that game that nobody wants to say. Another thing with names of your game, it can be important, at least in my opinion, for the name to give the player some semblance of what they're gonna do or what they can expect to see or experience in the game. You can see that in a lot of different genres with a lot of different games. It's really common to follow that kind of thing. If you're making a game about cats, maybe it's a cat that's lost somewhere and looking at robots, you might want to include a cat-like word in the name. That could help people understand and identify with it. Also, games with cats are pretty cool because who doesn't like cats? If you're building stuff in your game, maybe it's a city builder or something like that, having the word city in it is really common. Sim City, there's cities, skylines, and all of those are just giving you an idea of what's in the name. If it's a builder game or like a automation game, Satisfactory, you're building a factory, you're automating the factory. The names almost seem obvious after the fact, especially with SimCity and City Skylines. I think they had a little bit of advantage because they're much older, fewer games around at that time, less names had already been used. Another one is if you're making a game where your city just wanders around on the back of a really cool magical beast, like The Wandering Village. I love that name. It's a really good name. It actually pulled me in to look at that game in the first place. Using this kind of trick is something that I'm looking at doing with my next game. I want to get something kind of magical in there in some way. Another thing to think about that's related to that one I just mentioned is that there are certain expectations sometimes around the name of a game. If you think of games where you are managing something, they're almost always called something manager or something simulator, like Power Wash Simulator. The name is obvious. You power wash things and that's all you do. It seems like that entire genre of games of like job simulator type things always include the name of the job, simulator, manager, words like that in the title. So I think it could help a little bit with that. It could also be more difficult to differentiate. Another one that at least I know of is fantasy games. Often they use the name pattern of something. So with books, it's like Game of Thrones. Epic fantasy RPGs tend to be named this way, like Pillars of Eternity is one that I can think of now that's named like that. Really cool game, by the way. So that could be something that maybe you want to try to pull off if you're making a fantasy game that, or like a high fantasy game that's in that genre. Getting away from that more creative aspect of naming your game with respect to other games though, it is really important, in my opinion, to pick a name that is not really strongly SEO'd, and SEO is search engine optimization. I actually had this problem with Trace Hunters where there's a lot of neighborhoods in the United States are called like Hunter's Trace or something like that. And there was also a weapon in the Destiny series that was Hunter's Trace. I could never get my game to show up on Google. It does now because there's a lot more Google content. Google's kind of picked up that my game exists. It did work well on Steam. I did do a little Steam check to say, is the name Trace Hunters in existence on Steam? And what comes up when I type it in. So that was at least there. Making it easy for people to find your game can go a long way to helping you get more attention to it, because people really don't want to dig that much when they're trying to look something up, and they could incidentally stumble upon it when they're looking for something else, which is another advantage with SEO. When I've tried to do some SEO stuff with other apps and kind of my blog, these are kind of things that I would think about to include words about the thing that it's about so that it has some chance of showing up in search results, so that people don't have to dig forever to find it. Also related with this SEO thing, you need to search for the name of your game to see if it's already taken. Like with the Mana Forge example, When I came up with that name, it's just like a code name for the project because I always come up with these code names and then I change them later. And I typed it into Google and it's like, oh, it's a board game. Oh, it's a pretty cool looking board game. I guess I won't use that name, and it'll be something else when I go forward with that game. So I really suggest that you do this too. Look on Steam, look on socials, look on Google. You don't want to be in that situation where you just use the name of a game that already exists. Last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to names of games, think about how that name is going to exist as a logo, because you will need to make it into a logo to go onto your Steam art, to do marketing for the game. If you pick something that's maybe like a 48 character long word, that's unique and maybe could be searched if somebody could spell it. Making a logo out of that can be really hard. You can think of the shape of the logo or the size of the words that you use, because you want to make sure that's something that you can actually make into a game logo. Even if it's a really cool name, but it's incredibly long and it's maybe like almost a paragraph, it's going to be really hard for you to put that on the capsule art for Steam and have people recognize it in any way. Little different video this time. I just wanted to go and give some of my thoughts on what I'm thinking about when I'm trying to think of this name for my next game. In case you're new here, my name's Kyle. I make videos like this one 2 times per week on game dev and other game dev related topics. So hit that subscribe button right down there, leave me a comment. Look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you next time.